You have asked me why people envy the very things they pretend to admire in you. And to answer this question, we must descend into the labyrinth of the human soul, where envy and admiration are but two faces of the same archetypal mask. When you see someone looking at you with eyes that shine with praise, when you hear their words gilded with compliments, you must listen beneath the words. For beneath admiration often lurks the serpent of envy, coiled and silent. It is an ancient serpent, older than any individual biography, older than your parents or your childhood. It is the shadow of the collective psyche, moving within us like an underground river. The one who envies you cannot admit their envy to themselves, because envy is shameful. To envy is to confess poverty of the soul. Thus they disguise it in admiration. And what they speak with their lips is often the opposite of what they feel in their hearts. This paradox is born from the unconscious. The unconscious, as I've often said, is not merely a storehouse of forgotten memories, but a living world, an underworld populated by archetypes, symbols, figures. The gods themselves, hidden in modern dress, within this realm, envy emerges not simply as a petty human defect, but as a primordial force. In myths it appears as Cain slaying Abel, as the jealous gods punishing mortals who shine too brightly, as the rivalries of brothers and sisters in the ancient sagas. Envy is the dark twin of admiration, because both arise from recognition. When someone admires you, it means that in you they see a possibility of their own soul. They glimpse in your talent, your courage, your beauty, something that stirs within them, something they long for. If they are conscious, if they are whole, they will recognize this as a call, a message from their own depths. But if they are fragmented, if they are still bound in the chains of unconsciousness, then the same recognition that could have awakened them becomes a torment. Instead of inspiration, they feel deprivation. Instead of gratitude, they feel rage. Let me put this into a dream image. Imagine a dream in which you stand in a radiant house, a house of light with tall windows, and beside you stands a friend or a stranger. They say to you, "What a magnificent house you live in." They smile, but behind the smile you see that their hands are clenched. In the dream, if you look closer, you will see that this house is not made of bricks or stone, but of qualities, confidence, patience, creativity, resilience. It is your inner dwelling, built over years of struggle and pain. They admire the house because they see its beauty, but envy gnaws at them because they do not yet know how to build their own. The dream reveals a truth. Admiration and envy are two perspectives on the same object. To the conscious person, your inner house is a beacon. To the unconscious person, it is an accusation. The archetype at work here is the shadow. You must understand, the shadow is not only the repository of what we reject in ourselves as evil or shameful, it also contains the neglected gold, the latent greatness that we refuse to claim. When another human being encounters you shining in your wholeness, or even just in a fragment of your wholeness, they are confronted with their shadow. The shadow whispers, "This too could be yours, if only you dared." But because it is unbearable to acknowledge their own refusal, They project the pain outward. They admire you to your face because society demands civility. But in their unconscious they envy, and in the secret chambers of their heart they may even desire your fall. Why does envy wound so deeply when you perceive it? Because envy is not merely an emotion, it is an energetic act of violence. When someone envies, they cast a spell of negation. It is as if they are saying, I cannot bear for you to exist as you are. On the archetypal level, this is an attack on the self, the central organizing principle of the psyche. In ancient cultures, envy was regarded as a literal evil eye, a gaze that could wither crops, sicken children, and drain vitality. The mythic imagination intuited something we have forgotten, that the psyche is not contained in the skull, but radiates outward, and that emotions are not private, but forces that shape the shared field of reality. When someone envies you, they withdraw their blessing, and in its place they extend a curse. You feel it as a heaviness, as an inexplicable weariness, after encountering them, as a subtle dissonance. But here is the paradox that demands your reflection. Why do they envy the very thing they pretend to admire? Because envy is the shadow of love. Every person who envies you is secretly in love with you, not with your body, not with your surface, but with the image of their own unlived life that you embody. They desire what you carry. You are the mirror of their unlived possibility. And just as in love, we seek union with the beloved, so in envy they seek unconsciously to take from you what they feel denied within themselves. Yet because this cannot be done in truth, it becomes destructive. Consider, for example, the artist who creates from a deep spring of imagination. Those around her may say, your work is marvelous, your vision unique, but among the admirers will be one who secretly resents every brushstroke. Why? Because within that person lies a buried artist who was silenced in childhood, told their art was worthless, shamed for their dreams. Now when they see another creating freely, it awakens the buried archetype within themselves. Instead of liberation, it brings rage. They envy because they cannot forgive themselves for abandoning their own gift. This is why envy is always a message to both parties. To the one envied, it is a reminder that your light will attract shadows. To the one envying, it is a summons to reclaim their lost soul. But most people do not heed the summons. Instead, they continue the masquerade, wrapping envy in admiration, complimenting you while hoping secretly for your fall. And here, my friends, is where you must exercise discernment. For if you mistake envy for pure admiration, you will be lulled into complacency. You will think all eyes upon you are benevolent, when in truth some are arrows. You must learn to feel beneath the words, to sense the energy. Envy carries a vibration of constriction, a coldness behind the warmth. It is often betrayed in the eyes, in the subtle tightness around the mouth, in the way praise comes with a faint sting. If you are awake, you will perceive it not with judgment, but with clarity. Do not respond to envy with defensiveness, for that would entangle you in its poison. Do not shrink your light to make others comfortable, for that would betray the self within you. The correct response is compassion, but not a naive compassion. True compassion recognizes the suffering of the other while refusing to participate in their projection. You can silently bless them, but you must also protect your boundaries. For envy, left unchecked, can corrode relationships, sabotage endeavors, and even manifest as betrayal. In the collective psyche, envy is one of the great destroyers of communities. Families torn apart by rivalry, nations poisoned by resentment of their neighbors, revolutions sparked by envy of wealth and power, all these are expressions of the archetypal energy. That is why every wisdom tradition has spoken of envy as deadly. Yet I tell you, envy is not to be hated, but to be understood. For beneath envy lies longing, and beneath longing lies the soul's forgotten truth. When you are envied, therefore, do not despair. It means you have touched the archetypal fire. You have embodied something universal. The envy of others reveals the depth of your own authenticity, but also take it as a call to humility, for envy is a mirror of your own shadow as well. Do you think you are never envious? Look honestly into your dreams. You will find that at times you too have felt the sting of seeing in another what you had not yet cultivated in yourself. Envy is universal because the shadow is universal. To deny this is to fall into spiritual pride. Instead, let envy become your teacher. When you feel it within yourself, ask, what unlived life does this point to? What archetype have I repressed? When you see it in others, ask, what part of me must remain steadfast in my authenticity regardless of their projections? In this way, envy becomes alchemy. It burns, yes, but in the fire of consciousness, it can transmute into inspiration, into courage, into compassion. I will tell you another dream. A man dreams he's walking through a market, and there he sees stall after stall filled with treasures. But when he approaches, each treasure vanishes, and he is left empty-handed. He wakes feeling bitter, envious of those who have what he does not. But if he returns to the dream consciously, he realizes the market is his own soul, and the treasures vanish because he does not claim them. The dream teaches that envy is often a refusal to possess one's own gold. So when people envy you while pretending to admire, you are standing in the presence of their unclaimed treasure. Do not take it personally. It is not truly you they envy, but the reflection of themselves they see in you. Your task is to remain whole, to remain true to the self, to guard your inner house of light and continue building it brick by brick, without apology. To go deeper, we must ask, what is the root of envy in the human heart? It is the wound of separation. Every soul carries within it the memory of a primordial wholeness, a state of unity with the archetypal self, that radiant totality of being. But when we enter life, we enter division. We are split from the unconscious womb, from the eternal source, and hurled into the world of opposites, light and dark, good and evil, success and failure. The infant gazes at the mother's face and feels both nourishment and absence. The child grows into an adult, torn between longing for greatness and fear of rejection. Out of this tension, envy is born, for envy is the pain of seeing in another the image of that lost wholeness we secretly crave. Think of the myth of Prometheus. He brought fire to humanity. a divine gift, and for this he was punished by the gods. Why? Because the gods envied the spark that mortals would now carry. Envy is not confined to humans. In myth it belongs even to the divine. This is because envy is the shadow of creation itself. Whenever new light is born, the darkness stirs. Whenever someone embodies a portion of the self, others are reminded of their own exile from it. Thus envy follows all acts of creation like a shadow follows the body. In the unconscious, envy often appears in dreams as theft. A dreamer may find their possessions stolen, their jewels taken, their clothes ripped away. These are not literal objects, but symbols of psychic value, talents, virtues, achievements. The thief is often a figure of envy, an inner complex or an outer person who desires to possess what they feel deprived of. If you pay attention to such dreams, you will see that envy is not merely an interpersonal issue, but an inter-psychic drama. There is a part of your own psyche that envies another part, a fragment that resents the emergence of wholeness. You may find that as soon as you achieve something significant, another part of you whispers, "You don't deserve this. Others have more. Why not you?" This is inner envy, the shadow turned inward. In society, envy hides behind the mask of admiration because our conscious ego wishes to appear virtuous. No one wants to say, "I envy you." Instead they say, "I admire you." But the unconscious betrays itself. This duality is why you feel mixed energies from others. Consciously they send praise, unconsciously they send poison. And if you are unguarded, you will internalize both. You will be uplifted by their words, yet drained by their envy. This is the mystery of energy exchange in relationships. I must emphasize, you cannot escape envy by hiding. Some of you shrink your light, suppress your gifts, or sabotage your own success because you fear the eyes of envy. But this only feeds the shadow. To dim your light in order to be loved is to betray yourself. The task is not to avoid envy, but to walk with it consciously, as one walks with a wild animal. You must know it is always present. You must respect its power, but you must not surrender to its demands. Let me share with you the archetype of the hero. Every hero, when they rise, awakens envy in those around them. Joseph in the biblical story was envied by his brothers because of his coat of many colors, a symbol of his destiny. They pretended to admire, but in truth, they conspired to cast him into the pit. This story is not only history, it is psychological fact. Every individual who dares to wear the coat of their uniqueness will encounter the envy of others. The brothers are the collective which demands conformity. They cannot bear for one among them to shine too brightly, because it reflects their own refusal. Thus, they cover envy with admiration until the mask cracks. In dreams, the envious figure may appear as a double, a doppelganger, who both admires and sabotages you. This symbolizes the ambivalence of the collective towards the individual. You may be celebrated in public, yet undermined in private. The psyche dramatizes this tension in symbolic form, showing you that whenever you embody your individuality, you arouse both admiration and resentment. Why does envy so often masquerade as admiration. Because the psyche is cunning, the ego wants to remain innocent, so it disguises envy in socially acceptable form. It says, I admire you, and even convinces itself of sincerity, while underneath the archetypal serpent hisses, this split is dangerous, because it leads to unconscious action. Envy denied becomes sabotage. Gossip, betrayal, you have all experienced it. The one who smiles to your face yet undermines you behind your back. This is envy, wearing the mask of admiration. But what can you do with knowledge? First, cultivate awareness. Become a discerner of energies, not only of words. Train yourself to see beneath appearances. Second, strengthen your center. If you are rooted in the self, the envy of others will not destabilize you. You will feel it sting. Yes, but you will not be destroyed. Third, transmute envy into compassion. When you perceive envy in another, remember, they suffer because they are cut off from their own wholeness. Their envy is a confession of exile, and if you are wise, you will not answer hatred with hatred, but with firm compassion. The alchemical image is useful here. In alchemy, lead must be transformed into gold through fire. Envy is lead, heavy, dark, poisonous. But when it is brought into the fire of consciousness, it reveals the hidden gold of longing. For envy, at its root, is a longing for the lost self. If you can recognize this in yourself and others, then envy becomes not merely destructive, but transformative. Let me illustrate with another example. A woman dreams that she is standing in a garden, watching another woman pick flowers of radiant beauty. She feels both admiration and envy. She wakes conflicted, but if she works with the dream, she realizes the other woman is her own soul image, her anima expressing creativity. She has not yet embraced the envy, points her towards her unlived life. If she acknowledges this, the envy becomes guidance. If she denies it, the envy festers into bitterness. This is the choice we all face. Therefore, I say to you, do not fear envy, but learn its language. When others envy you, see it as confirmation that you are living authentically. When you envy others, see it as a summons to reclaim your own gifts. For envy, when conscious, becomes the bridge to wholeness. It shows you what you secretly desire, but have not yet dared to claim. Do not be surprised then that those who admire you also envy you, for admiration without envy is rare. Most human beings are not whole enough to admire purely. Their admiration is mixed with longing, and longing twisted by the shadow becomes envy. You must accept this as a law of the psyche, just as you accept that fire burns, and yet, though it burns, it also illuminates. Envy forces you to anchor more deeply in yourself. It teaches you to let go of the need for universal approval. It shows you that to walk the path of individuation is to walk alone at times, carrying the burden of others' projections. If you can bear this, you will become not only stronger, but freer. For the one who is no longer controlled by the envy or admiration of others is the one who stands in true sovereignty. So I urge you, continue to shine, continue to embody your uniqueness. Do not apologize for the gifts you have been given. The envy of others is not your responsibility. It is their invitation to wholeness. And your task is to remain faithful to your path, regardless of their projections. For in the end, envy and admiration alike are illusions of the outer world. What matters is the inner gaze, the eye of the self, which sees you in truth. There is another dimension to envy that must be spoken of, for it pierces even deeper into the archetypal field of human relations. When a person admires you outwardly and envies you inwardly, they are not only split within themselves, they are inviting you into a psychic drama. Their unconscious seeks to bind you into a hidden contract. I will admire you publicly, but secretly I will try to diminish you. You will accept my praise, and in return you will unknowingly carry the burden of my resentment. This is why you sometimes feel so inexplicably heavy after receiving compliments. The words sound like honey, but the energy feels like lead. It is because the admiration is hollow, the envy real. In myths, this pattern appears often as the treacherous ally. The hero is celebrated by companions who secretly conspire against him. Consider Julius, Caesar, and Brutus, or the Norse tales where the bright god Balder is praised by all yet felled by envy disguised as friendship. These are not merely political tales, they are psychological truths. In every community, every family, every circle of friends, there is the potential for this archetypal betrayal. It comes not because people are wicked, but because they are human. And to be human is to wrestle with shadow. The projection mechanism explains much here. Projection is the psyche's way of disowning what it cannot bear. When someone envies you, what they truly envy is not you, but their own unlived self. They project it onto you because you serve as the screen for their unconscious film. You become the actor who embodies the role they have not yet dared to play. In this sense, you are not envied for what you have, but for what they have abandoned in themselves. You may think they envy your wealth, your beauty, your knowledge, your influence, but these are only symbols. The real object of envy is the archetypal spark of self that shines through you. Let us make this clearer with a dream. Imagine you dream of standing in a vast cathedral, light pouring through stained glass. At your side stands a figure who whispers how radiant you are. Yet as you turn, you see that same figure holding a dagger beneath their cloak. This is the symbol of envy disguised as admiration. The cathedral is your inner self, the place where divine light radiates. The whisper of praise is the ego's mask, but the dagger is the shadow's truth. Such dreams warn us that wherever there is light, there will also be those who seek to extinguish it, not out of malice alone, but because your light reminds them of their darkness. The wise response is neither paranoia nor denial. If you live in paranoia, you will suspect every compliment and isolate yourself in bitterness. If you live in denial, you will be blind to betrayal and repeatedly wounded. The middle way is awareness without fear. Know that envy exists. Accept it as the shadow's response to light. Walk among others with eyes open. with heart unpoisoned. Some of you ask, but why me? Why must I be envied? I did not seek to provoke this. Understand, envy is the price of individuation. The more you embody your own self, the more you provoke the shadow in others. To be envied is not a sign of failure, but of success. It means you have become visible, that you are carrying a flame others have neglected, yet do not let this become pride. For pride itself is a mask for insecurity. Walk humbly with your light, not flaunting it, yet not hiding it either. Notice also how envy multiplies in groups. A single individual's envy is painful, but collective envy is destructive. This is why great teachers, prophets, innovators are often crucified by the very communities that once admired them. At first the crowd admires their uniqueness, but when admiration turns to envy, the crowd demands their downfall. The same voices that once shouted Hosanna later cry, crucify. This is an eternal archetype, the rise and fall of the admired one, envied into destruction by the very people who once celebrated them. Thus you must learn to root your identity not in the admiration of the crowd, nor in the fear of their envy, but in the silent gaze of the self within. The self is the only witness that does not betray. When you live from this center, you are free from both flattery and envy. You no longer need to be admired, nor are you destroyed by being envied. You walk in your own wholeness, whether others praise you or curse you. Envy also has a peculiar relationship with intimacy. Often those who are closest to you are those who envy you most. Why? Because proximity intensifies projection. The stranger may admire you without envy, for they do not measure themselves directly against you. But the sibling, the friend, the colleague, they see themselves in comparison with you every day. And comparison is the fertile soil of envy. Thus, it is often within families that envy festers most bitterly. Brothers envy brothers, sisters envy sisters, parents even envy children, and children envy parents. The closer the bond, the deeper the wound. This is why in myth the greatest betrayals are among kin. Cain kills Abel. Joseph's brothers cast him into the pit. Romulus kills Remus. These are archetypal images of the psychic truth that envy thrives where love should be. Admiration among kin can easily cloak envy because love provides the perfect disguise. The words may be full of affection, but beneath them lies the resentment of comparison. To see this clearly is not to condemn family, but to understand its archetypal dangers. And what of envy within yourself? Do not think it is only others who envy. You too are divided. One part of you admires another part and at the same time resents it. For example, you may admire your own courage in moments of boldness, yet envy it when you are weak. You may admire your creativity, yet envy it when you feel barren. This inner division is why we sabotage ourselves. We envy our own potential. We are afraid of what we might become. For to become it would mean the death of our smaller self. Thus, we turn our admiration inward into envy and block our own path. The cure lies in integration. To integrate envy, whether in yourself or others, is to acknowledge it honestly Say to yourself, yes, envy, I feel the sting. This shows me what I long for, but have not claimed. When you name it, you disarm it. When you deny it, you give it power. Similarly, when others envy you, recognize it silently. You need not accuse them, nor should you pretend it is not there. Simply see it for what it is. Do not drink their poison, but do not return poison with poison. If envy is left unconscious, it becomes destructive. If brought into consciousness, it becomes transformative. That is the alchemy. The base metal of envy hides the gold of longing. The one who envies you is unconsciously longing for their own wholeness. If they awaken, their envy becomes inspiration. If they remain asleep, their envy becomes hatred. You cannot control which path they take. You can only control your own path, which is to remain true to yourself. So let us return to the question, why do people envy the very things they pretend to admire in you? Because the psyche cannot yet bear its own poverty, because they see in you the treasure buried in themselves. Because admiration is the mask they wear in public, while envy is the wound they carry in private. This duality is as old as humanity. It is the shadow that walks beside every gift, every achievement, every light. And I tell you, do not despise this truth, for in it lies the great paradox. To be envied is to be chosen by the archetype. The gods have given you a gift that awakens both love and hate. It is not easy to carry, but it is sacred. You must not let envy destroy you, nor let admiration seduce you. Walk the razor's edge between them, and you will find the path of individuation. There is yet another layer that must be revealed, for envy is not merely a private affair between two individuals. It is a mystery woven into the collective unconscious. When you are envied, you are standing not only before one person's wounded shadow, but before the entire archetypal drama of humanity's struggle with light. You embody something that transcends your own biography, and therefore you provoke responses that seem disproportionate. People may admire you excessively, envy you irrationally, praise you beyond measure, or despise you without cause. This is because you have stepped onto the stage where archetypes are at play. The archetypal energy that underlies envy is the struggle between the self and the ego. The self is vast, luminous, eternal. The ego is narrow, fragile, temporal. When the ego sees the self shining through another person, it feels both awe and terror. Awe, because it is drawn instinctively toward the light. Terror, because it fears annihilation in that same light. Thus, the ego disguises its fear with admiration, yet secretly wishes for the destruction of what it admires. This paradox is the essence of envy. To live consciously is to accept that others will cast their projections upon you, both light and dark. Some will idolize you, placing upon you the burden of their unlived divinity. Others will demonize you, projecting onto you the darkness they refuse to see within. Both idolization and demonization are forms of envy, for both deny your humanity. To be idolized is to be envied for embodying someone else's divine spark. To be demonized is to be envied for holding what someone else has disowned. In both cases, you are not truly seen. You are turned into a mirror of their unconscious. So what then is your task? Your task is to endure being misunderstood, to stand firm in your wholeness, even when you are praised falsely or cursed unjustly, to know that neither admiration nor envy defines you. What defines you is your fidelity to the inner self, that still point in the turning world. If you cling to admiration, you will be enslaved by the crowd. If you collapse under envy, you will betray your own light. Only by rooting yourself in the self can you walk free. Let me give you a final dream. A woman dreams she is standing at the edge of a vast lake. People gather around her, praising her beauty, envying her presence, murmuring among themselves. Some reach out as if to touch her. Others whisper behind her back. She feels torn between pride and fear. Then she hears a voice from the depths of the lake. Do not look at them. Look into me. She gazes into the water and sees her true face reflected. A face luminous with both light and shadow. In that moment, the voices around her fade, and she feels whole. This dream reveals the truth. The only gaze that matters is the gaze of the deep self. In the great alchemical texts, the final stage of transformation is called rubedo. The reddening, it is the union of opposites, the birth of the philosopher's stone, the emergence of wholeness. In psychological terms, rubedo occurs when you no longer fear the envy of others, nor are seduced by their admiration, but live from the eternal flame within. Then envy becomes merely another wave in the sea of the collective, no longer capable of drowning you. You become transparent, immune to projection, because you know that whatever others see in you is their own soul calling to them. And so, my friends, I tell you, do not seek to be admired. Do not despair when you are envied. Both are shadows on the wall. Seek instead to be whole. Live your life so that what shines through you is not your ego, but the self. When you do this, envy will still surround you, but it will no longer define you. You will become like a tree standing tall in the forest. Birds may rest in your branches. Some may curse your shade. Some may covet your fruit, but you remain rooted, drawing life from the depths of the earth. Envy will never disappear from the human condition. It is too deeply rooted in the archetypal fabric, but it can be transformed in the individual. Envy becomes longing when brought into consciousness. In the community, envy becomes inspiration when transmuted into mutual recognition. And in the collective, envy becomes evolution when it drives humanity to awaken to its own shadow and reclaim its forgotten light. Therefore, when people envy the very things they pretend to admire in you, remember this: you are not merely the target of their shadow. You are the bearer of their secret hope. Their envy is a distorted face of their longing. And if you remain faithful to your own path, if you continue to embody the wholeness of the self, you may in time awaken in them the courage to reclaim what they once disowned. The path of individuation is not for the faint of heart. To live it is to walk in a world where envy and admiration swirl like opposing winds. Yet if you stand firm, If you anchor yourself in the self, you will discover a deeper freedom. You will no longer be swayed by the praise of others, nor pierced by their envy. You will live as who you are, not as who others imagine you to be. And that, my friends, is the greatest victory. To live authentically, to embody the eternal spark, to let your light shine without apology. And so I leave you with this final truth. Envy is not your enemy, but your teacher. It shows you the shadow in others. It shows you the shadow within yourself. It teaches you humility, vigilance, and compassion. It forces you to anchor in the self, to seek the gaze of the eternal rather than the applause of the temporal. If you can endure its sting, if you can transmute its poison, envy will lead you not into bitterness but into wholeness. Walk then with courage. Do not dim your flame for fear of envy. Do not crave admiration as if it were nourishment. Nourish yourself at the well of the self and let the world do as it will, for in the end, neither envy nor admiration matters. Only wholeness matters. Only truth matters. And truth, once lived, cannot be destroyed.